Hello and welcome to my weekly video blog, and today on A Vogel Talks Menopause I'm going to be talking about 7 less well-known menopause facts that you need to know. Now if you like my tips and advice, then please subscribe and remember to hit the bell icon so you can be notified of all new videos that come out. One of the things we found over the years is that there are surprising symptoms and things that happen in the menopause that very often can take women by surprise. And I know that there was several things happened to me and I didn't realize it was the menopause until I actually started looking into everything. So I thought I would go through some of the things that have cropped up over the years that a lot of women are maybe sort of struggling with. So number one is that the menopause can start earlier and go on for a lot longer than what you expected. Now we've had women who thought that 3 months without a period and that would be them through the menopause, and unfortunately that is just not the case. The average age to start the approach to the menopause is 45 to 55. But a lot of women do start earlier. And again, you know, if you're thinking that you're going to start the menopause at 50, and by the time you're 42, you're starting to get hot flushes and night sweats, it can be really quite a surprise and a shock. One of the things that can be an indication, but is not set in stone, is that if you know what age your mum or your elder sister or your aunties or your grandmother started the menopause, then very often it does tend to be hereditary and you may start around the same age. But it's one of these situations whereby it's impossible to tell. We're all very, very different, and we will all start the approach to the menopause in different ways and at different ages. The other thing that can happen is that the menopause can go on for a lot longer than what you think. There is this misconception that once you are considered postmenopausal, which we tend to say 2 years just because in our experience we found that a lot of women take that long before their periods finally stop, is that you find that symptoms should just suddenly stop and you'll be as right as rain, dead on the 2-year mark. Again, this doesn't really happen. Your symptoms very often tend to start to ease off after a couple of years without periods. But again, it's different for everybody. We've had women come to us that are still experiencing menopause symptoms 10 years down the line. The only thing I will say here is if you are still getting menopause symptoms 4 to 5 years after your periods have stopped, if they're starting to get worse, if they suddenly appear again, then please do double check with your doctor. Other health issues such as diabetes, low vitamin D or B12, low thyroid function, or low iron, all of these can cause menopause symptoms, so they can creep in at some point and take over, and you don't realize that maybe menopause symptoms have stopped and it's other health issues that are continuing with all these particular symptoms. Number 2 is tests. We often get asked, is there a test that can show if I'm going through the menopause? The problem with blood tests is they tend to measure your hormone level, but the problem is they only test it when the test is taken, and your hormones can fluctuate on a daily basis. So you could find that your periods have been stopped for a good few months, you're getting a few menopause symptoms, you go to the doctor, tests come back and they say no, you're not in the menopause. So they're not particularly accurate and they can sometimes cause a little bit of confusion. How do you tell you're in the menopause? Again, it's really difficult. Usually you would go by age, or if other female members of your family started at a particular age, and you just go by the more common menopause symptoms, and usually that's a good enough indication that you're either approaching the menopause or you are actually in the menopause itself. Number 3, we get so many women just amazed that they can still get pregnant through the menopause. Again, you know, some of them said, oh, I've only been without periods for 6 months, I thought I would be safe. Normally, if you're under 50, you are only considered safe from pregnancy after 2 years without a period. And if you're over 50, it's usually 1, although we tend to say, please take the 2 years just to be on the safe side. The number of surprise menopause babies in the UK seems to be going up. So if you don't want to get pregnant, it's really important to keep using some form of contraceptive until you have finally got through the 2-year mark. Number 4 is that emotional symptoms can be worse than physical ones. Now, we have a menopause Facebook page, and very often we do these little surveys, and we found in this one that 48% of women felt that the menopause emotional symptoms that they were experiencing were far worse than the physical ones. They can be really horrible, they can take you by surprise, you can feel totally out of control. You know, a lot of women find they get anger, they get irritability, they get short-tempered, they get fed up, they lose the interest in everything. They just feel that you know, they want to give up on everything as well. So just be aware that for some women, the emotional side of it can be that little bit worse than the physical symptoms that you're experiencing. For the emotional symptoms, very often things like balancing estrogen, so if it's appropriate, you have our menopause support. Also loads of magnesium, because that will keep your mood level. And the flower essences are really lovely. I tend to recommend things like emotional essence or female essence, just to help with these particular emotional issues. Number 5, there can be a lot of surprising symptoms that very often don't get connected to the menopause, and women will start to experience something, go to the doctor, not realizing that it's part and parcel of the menopause. And in our Facebook survey, we found that 93% of women were surprised by some of the symptoms they were getting. They were just not expecting them. In our experience, the more surprising ones, especially at the beginning, was joint pain. We hadn't realised how huge an issue joint pain is in the menopause. It was number 3 on our list of menopause symptoms. There's things like nausea. Another surprising one, problems with your teeth and your gums. You can get something called burning mouth. You can get teenage acne, you can get things like restless leg, you can get digestive problems. Things like acid reflux are one of the more surprising symptoms that we find, and also cold flushes as well as hot flushes. So if you're in a situation where you're suddenly getting something that seems very strange for either your lifestyle or your age, it may well be connected to the menopause. So it's always worth double checking with your doctor, and remember to tell them that you're in the menopause, otherwise they might not make the connection there. Number 6 is you can feel less sociable. This was a really big surprise for us, to find that so many women felt that they wanted to just shut themselves away. They didn't want to have to deal with daily life. They didn't want to go out and meet friends or go out for a meal or go to the pictures or parties. So a lot of women find that there is a point in the menopause where they really just want solitude and peace and quiet. I know in this day and age it's a really difficult situation to be in. We can't always shut ourselves away. But if you get to this point, then it is a good idea to look at your lifestyle, look at what's happening in your life, and maybe try and cut back in some areas just so that you can get that little bit of extra me time. Number 7, periods can come back. This is another one that women get so surprised. They think that maybe once they've missed 3 or 4 periods that's it. But in a lot of cases, periods can come back. We find in some instances that it can be even after a year or a year and a half. In these situations, it tends to be your hormones are having one last fling, that there's something has just stirred your hormones up a little bit. you can end up having a period. It can also be improving your diet and lifestyle. It's amazing how many women come to me and say they've cleaned up their diet, they're exercising sensibly, and they're having rest and relaxation, and the next minute their periods come back. This is just because you've given your body that little bit extra and it thinks, let's just have another little go. It could also be due to a shock, a sort of distress, emotional distress. It could be doing really heavy exercise. I had one lady her periods came back after she went from a bike ride, which she hadn't been on for a long time. So there's lots and lots of different situations that can trigger your periods. However, it's really important that if you have not had any periods for 6 months or more, and they come back, please do get this checked out, just to make sure it isn't anything else. Fibroids can suddenly be irritated as you go through the menopause. It could be something like a prolapse, or even cysts or polyps could start to develop. So always get this checked out by your doctor as well, just to make sure that nothing else is contributing to the bleeding. So I hope you found this interesting. If any of you have had really surprising symptoms, or wonder if the symptoms you're getting are part and parcel of the menopause, then please do let us know, and we'll all share our tips and everything. And until then, I will see you next week for another edition of A. Vogel Talks Menopause.